Whenever you're
You're on the
ready.
payroll now.
Rolling.
With the clock starting. All right, Henry. How did you first meet Bob Stork?
I met Bob back in late 1978. I was a law enforcement officer, and communications at that time, it was Vero Beach, was the radio maintenance provider for the radio equipment. And of course, we had a failure with a piece of equipment, and I had to come to their office and get it worked on. And they were very, very small, and but very interesting people. And Bob had a partner named Howard, and I actually met with him a lot more. And there was something about this group of people, a small, very small group, that I couldn't quite fit. They loved what they did, and they had such great enthusiasm. Just the partnership, and that's how I met them.
Well, that's very cool. Now, how long have you worked at Communications International?
Well, I have to say it this way because they'd make so much fun of me. Off and on, I have worked for Communications International since 1979. I came to them part-time on my days off when I was working in public safety. And then in 1988, I came full-time. I did leave the company for a short 2.5 years to work for Harris Corporation. But I missed my family very much. And I came back. I asked Bob, and he's such a great soul. And I asked him if I could come back. And he was so gracious and let me come back. So.
You were just talking a little bit about it, but your website here, Communications, a website mentions that the first location was an old gas station with 3 employees. Tell me a little more about that. Where was it located, and who were the employees?
So the location of the very first office, and I actually never worked out of that office, but it was at the corner of 16th Street and 14th Avenue. And the original employees were Bob and his partner Howard Culver, and Tommy Emerson. Tommy was a retired City of Vero Beach worker that kind of was a little bit of a custodian and greeted the people when they came in the door. So that was the 3 of them, and they soon moved to an office in Hickory Ridge, which is on 12th Street in Old Dixie, and that's where I actually came in and started working with them. And it was a little teeny office, so we were always in each other's space. And I worked, and Bob and his partner decided he wanted to retire and get out of the business. So Bob was at the helm, and we were all in. Everyone has always been all in this company, and that's the enthusiasm has probably been one of the great factors that have made it grown.
What was your role at that time? What kind of work did you do?
I was a sales guy. I went out and talked to people about communications needs, and you have to understand, back in that day, radio was a bit of a novelty. There was no cell phones. Beepers were what doctors had, pagers, and some plumbers did. So this was the first type of radio communications that people could put in their trucks, like electricians and plumbers and other type of construction type support business. And we had a lot of customers in Indian River and Brevard County. So it made a big difference, and it was very good. And it also, Bob was the first, communications at that time, it was Communications at Vero Beach, was the first company to actually have their radios have what they called a telephone interconnect, which you could make telephone calls from the radio. Very, very novel, because no one had car phones at that time. And it was phenomenal business, and we couldn't keep them on the shelf, I'll tell you that.
We did not know anything about that until we interviewed Bob, and he started talking about having come up with Bob started talking to us during the interview about having come up with that ability to do that, and my jaw just dropped. I mean, so how did he kind of invented it, or is that stretching it? I mean, let's be fair.
I will. Bob didn't invent the telephone interconnect, but it wasn't being used in this particular fashion. They had used it for other types of technologies. And there were the FCC was fairly restrictive at that time about using that type of technology. But Bob's pretty innovative, and so we created this application, is probably a better way to put it, where we could use it. It met all the guidelines of the FCC, which is the regulating body of all radio worlds. And we were able to get it accomplished, and it really flourished. And it was the first application that it was used, to my knowledge, at least in the Southeast, that we saw it being used and was practical. That was another thing, because the only other alternative to ever have a mobile telephone device was these big in-car telephones that actually had dials on them, and they were unbelievably expensive, thousands and thousands of dollars, and $5 a minute to use them, and it was this was just pennies of that. So it was quite popular, I will tell you that.
I'm gonna have to have you do that one more time. We just had it.
There was a motorcycle in the back, and then this.
This guy decided to kick on.
Oh, I don't even know where the off is on that.
Let's see.
It's plugged in probably behind the cabinet, Jimmy.
You're probably going to have to slide that thing out. There's no.
Yeah. I heard that motorcycle, and I was like, oh no, please, because what you were saying was perfect.
We will probably be able to use a lot of it, so you don't have to get it verbatim,
Yeah.
but best you can. And
Okay.
it sounds like I got that, but just set a reminder.
Otherwise, there'll be warm sprites in the
Yeah.
conference room
Oh.
from now on, making people not happy.
There'll be some grumpy
Yeah.
people.
Okay, let's roll.
Well, we led into that because I was telling you about
Mhm.
how Bob shared with us that you guys were using that technology, and then I asked you if Bob had been the person who actually invented that technology, and then you started by saying Bob didn't actually invent the technology, and then you went from there. It was excellent.
So Bob applied a technology, a Touchtone. So we all know what a Touchtone phone is, and applied that technology to on a mobile radio, which allowed that radio to make a phone call. And there was a lot of regulation in that, and we were able to get that approved by the FCC to allow it to happen and make phone calls. They were, for whatever reason at that time, and I was young and I didn't know why, but they thought that was a big deal. But anyway, got that all solved. It was very, very popular because, again, there were no telephones in mobile cars except for these big bulky things that cost a tremendous amount of money, and they were very expensive per minute. It was not unusual for things to cost upwards to $5 a minute to make a phone call. So with that being, it really offered the business person a great opportunity to run his business remotely and be able to call in things where normally you'd either have to drive back to the office, tell somebody that, hey, this inspection didn't happen or this didn't show up or something like that. So it really was revolutionary, I thought, in this time. And I was pretty young. I thought it was cool.
So things must have started to really begin to grow at that point in the company's history.
As we grew, and we saw that technology embrace, we grew fast, and we outgrew our facility over in Old Dixie and 12th Street very quickly. And we also started to get a little bit more into public safety. We hadn't been very much in public safety, but the commercial business was flourishing. They built a building on First Street, and we operated out of there for many, many years. And we started to see a transition in the business where the commercial business was very, very good. And we started to get into public safety. We started to bid on government jobs, which we had historically not done. And we got a few here and we got a few there. Lion's share was still commercial business, but I started concentrating more on the government side. I had other salespeople that handled more of the commercial business, and we were right on the tipping point that cellular was just starting to be talked about, and it was being deployed in the Northeast and down in the Miami area, and it hadn't reached little old Vero Beach, and so as that time started to happen, we were kind of looking, where is this going to play? How are we going to do that? So we talked about it, and again, we grew more, and we're positioning ourselves, and we talked about where we wanted to be. That was something that Bob, I don't know if it was such a conscious effort, but I think it was more of he listened to the people he worked with on what their opinion was. When Bob said we're the direction we're going, we all did it, but he seeked out and sought out people's advice on where they were going, what they were doing, and what did they think. And I think that's been really one of the major contributors of why we've grown so well, because he listened to a lot of different people to make decisions.
So how would you describe his leadership style?
Bob's leadership it's not an autocratic style whatsoever. Very democratic in a lot of cases. We would look and he would ask, we'd watch the industry, obviously, and read what was going on and attend trade shows. And a lot of that keys were, should we go here? Sometimes it was a big leap. Sometimes it was not, or it was pretty safe to move. So he would encourage, what did people think? And when we made that decision, he would, again, it was a small group, we'd say, look, I think this is what we should do. And once the decision was made, we'd go. So you always felt like you were part of the decision making and what the growth was in the company. At the end of the day, it was his company, and he put it all on the line. But it was that part, I think, was just so infectious about how we were part of what we became.
Very good. How are things different in the early days regarding setting up systems? Now, what I'm really getting at here is early technology versus current technology. Like, kind of walk me through in the old days how you would.
Well, the early wireless communications was probably more hammer and rock compared to what we see today. Everyone takes a cell phone for granted. At that time, no one really. The police had radios, but in business or as individuals, no one did. Doctors, it was always something that was afforded. And putting those systems was difficult at the time because we just didn't have the technology. And as the regulation relaxed, they allowed certain things to happen within the technology. It became a little easier to deploy that to advance the technology along. But it got a lot more sophisticated. And there's a rule in radio that if it doesn't cover the boss's house, it doesn't work anywhere. So you had to, especially in government, you had to look at where do things work at. So the systems became a lot more sophisticated. So as the demand for wireless communications grew, the demand for a much more complex radio system began. And so you took in a lot more factors. How do you make a communication system cover a county or a region or a state? And we were part of helping design some of that in a lot of cases. And as we went into a digital technology, more things, the radios would do more. And there was a transition from communications from the mobile mounted radio to handheld devices. People wanted them to work inside. People wanted them to work everywhere. They just think, well, it should work everywhere. Well, you have to have those big ugly towers that people don't like in their backyard in order for that to happen. So the challenge is, we just kept rising our level of sophistication and our technical knowledge to meet those challenges. And that's kind of how things evolved in the wireless world. So.
Well, when Bob first started talking to us during his interview, he was talking about how the system, the radio-to-radio communication, and then the tower retransmits the signal, and et cetera, and my eyes just glazed over. I mean, how do you even begin to start? How does someone start?
So, as the systems, when we look at radio, you have to look at what it's being used for. And the distance between when you hold something in your hand, it's on a battery. Well, it can only transmit and go so far. So yes, they have to go to a tower. And think of it this way: it's like if you had somebody on the ground, and then you had somebody at a mountaintop. If you look at the old movies, for instance, they have signal fires, but you couldn't see each other. So you'd set a fire here, and the person on the mountaintop would sit there and say, "Oh, I see the fire," and they'd light a fire, and these people would know, "Hey, there's something going on over there." Well, radio's the same way. Instead of trying to directly talk from one place to another, we talk to the top of the mountain. Whatever the voice was goes to the top of the mountain and is rebroadcast down like you were shouting from one to another. So that's really how relay through a tower works. I was never a technical person. I was always interested in it, but I was a police officer. And Bob would take the time, and he takes the time with anybody, and because I would go in and I wouldn't understand, just like you were saying, how does this work? And he would take the time and go, okay, this is what you do, and this is why you do it, and this is you go through all those things, and you go, oh, okay, I get it. And that is how I've gotten my communications education over time, because people were very interested in learning, and we've always encouraged that within the company. When new employees come in, even if you're not in sales, you're in marketing, or you're this and that and the other, we take everybody through a Radio 101. This is how it works. So they have a basic understanding of what we do and how we do it. So when the systems get bigger and more complex, you need more towers, and you have to relay all that information from a device that you hold in your hand so it can relay through all these towers from point to point to point to point. And that communications, that voice, arrives at the other end 30 miles away or 1,000 miles away, depending on how you've designed it. I was part of the state of Florida deployment when we were very heavily involved in that. And I was actually with Governor Bush when he did the inaugural call. I was lucky enough to be chosen to teach the governor on how that works. So CI was part of that whole effort, and he made a call from Key West to Pensacola, and from a consul in Miami. It was a very big, proud moment for us.
What year was that, Henry?
2008.
So this system is still in place?
Oh yeah, same system. And Bob loves to be involved in the widget part of it, the technical part. And I think that's one of the things that people have, the employees, I can tell you, and other people that outside the company have always appreciated from Bob. He never worried about getting his hands dirty. He never worried about, oh, I'm the owner or the president of the company. He was Bob. He was a coworker. And he's always given that feeling to everybody that he's ever met and he works with. He doesn't have airs about him, and everybody feels so comfortable around him. And he's always willing to help and show and tell, and I think that's been probably one of the best things that has grown this company and have people very loyal to this company.
That's very good. In the early days, what was a typical work day? Now, Bob, like you just said, Bob was out there working. Now, was he the one climbing up on the towers? I talked to you about this on the phone. I kind of wanted to hear. Were you out there with Bob, or?
Sometimes. Bob climbed some towers, yes. After a while, you farm that out to the people that really should be climbing towers. But yeah, you're jack of all trades. You do everything. You climb towers. You install radios. There has not been anything in this business that Bob has not done. And we worked as long as it took to get the job done. We started early, typically in the 7 o'clock range. It was not unusual to be working at 6, 7 o'clock at night, much to the chagrin of our spouses. But we worked on weekends. Oh my gosh, on big system deployments. We worked 7 days a week on holidays. Bob and I were in Pearson, Florida on July 4th in 1991, putting a radio system in that had to be deployed by the 7th of July. So we were in there wiring things up and sweating because there was no air conditioning in this thing. But you do what you had to do. That's always been our attitude. You do what you have to do. And we've got great employees that do it.
So he told us that, were you there during the first 5 years of the business, or that was just Howard?
No, so they started in 75,
Okay.
and so I came in 79, so tail end of that. Howard did all that. They were a great complement to each other. Howard handled more of the sales. Bob was the techie guy on the bench and was a bit shy. You find that hard to believe now, but he was a bit shy, and so I guess when I came in, I've never been shy, so when Howard wanted to retire, it was a good fit, so that's when I came in, we grew. We just outgrew where we were so fast. We were only at Hickory Ridge. Well, they were there before, but oh my gosh, it was not a year and a half before we had to move. We moved into a place we thought, oh my gosh, we'll never fill this space, and we were all packed in there. We grew to another building next door and across the street, and we were growing. It was great, and then we opened up. We moved up to Brevard and opened an office up there, and it was. We supported some paging up there. It was pretty exciting. Our office wasn't great up there, but we soon moved out of that and got into a really nice space. And that's when cellular came in. So that was another complete dynamic in the business and part of the growth. So we hired more people, and it was scary and exciting, and we did all sorts of things and got more government contracts. We were awarded a big contract in Brevard, biggest thing we'd ever done, and with the sheriff's department, and just grew. Had 2 more offices after that, and it just is, part of the fear, because I was more in an administrative role at that time, and where are we going to get the money to do this? Are we going to make it a success? So, but I think very ambitious decisions are done, of course, out of where you can go. A little bit of fear. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of fear. It keeps you straight. But never looking back. Just keeping forward. And Bob was so supportive of that. We constantly had checks of ourselves. Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing it? Well, if we're doing it, we're going for it. And that was one of the things Bob is. If you're going to go, go. Don't look back. Run. And so we did that. That's how I did it.
That's great. Well, every time you opened a new location, tell me about some of the company culture or some of the tenets of the company that were always put in place, that remain constant no matter what zip code you were in.
As we grew and we hired people that were not necessarily familiar with us, one of the things we spent time with those people. So Bob went out into the field. He would go to the offices and talk to them, and what do you need here? What do you see the challenges are? Constantly testing new people, but also showing them that the approachability, that the owner, the president, the CEO of the company was very approachable. When Bob Stork walked into an office, no one thought, oh my gosh, I need to do this or I need to do that. The office better be clean. But it was what he was there, what can I do to help? And that philosophy of there is no separate businesses. We are all one business. And how we move and think, we are not afraid to ask. One of the things there's no stupid question. I don't understand this. And Bob was so good, and he just instilled that in all of us, that no one have airs about them. Everyone is approachable. We're a very flat managed company. When you go to lunch, you could have one of the people on the board. You'd have Bob. You'd have the COO, the CFO. We're all eating a pizza, and it doesn't matter if you're an installer or a receptionist or anything. Everybody felt that they had voice. And Bob is just we instilled that on people as we grew out and moved out. We just instilled that philosophy in everyone, and that came from Bob. And because it was again, I don't know if it was always intentional. It's just his nature, and having that family feel, because it really is a family. And when people had bad times, for instance, they may not even know them that well. He had maybe only met someone, but if they were in need, Bob was there. And Bob cared. He cared deeply about everyone in the company and treated them like family. And if they needed a place to stay, if they had lost a family member, he was there. He took interest in it. And I think that's one of the things as we developed the culture and made CI a much more involved and intricate group of people, more of a collective, more of a collective look and feel. And he was very good about propagating that out and farther and keeping that message. And you didn't get too high and mighty on anything, because Bob would put you in check very quickly, and because nobody was any better than anyone else.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes you get too far away from the mothership and things don't go well.
Great.
What's going on?
I said we all done it.
Oh.
With the phone.
Do we want to go into the major competition back in the early days? What specific challenges did the company face during the early years?
We can. I mean,
Okay.
it's
Okay, what kind of challenges did you guys face?
our main
Talking about the Motorola.
yeah.
Okay.
Motorola has always been our main competition. There's always been other dealers out there, but Motorola, the company itself, has always been. They're a mighty foe, mighty. They have the majority of the market in the United States and, even globally. So here's little CI, and we have to compete with this very large Chicago-based organization. Even in the early days, when we came up with our novel approach, they did not do those types of technologies. They were very, very against it. And matter of fact, they fought it and said, hey, you guys are skirting the rules. You can't be doing that. And we were challenged sometimes. Well, the FCC took care of that. And but as we grew, more Motorola was taking notice that at that time we were a General Electric representative, and we would go in and kind of poke the bear, but we'd win, and it was hard, but we were successful because people went past the brand, they went past what logo had, and they looked at us and they looked at the people. We grew because of us. We won. We continued to win against Motorola because of CI. not necessarily always the brand we carry or the products we have, because we lead with ourselves. And we hope, it's a little difficult world today, but I still believe that people like doing business with people they trust, and they feel are at least are always going to be honorable, always going to take the right step forward and not always look at it that they're trying to line a pocket or they're looking at the bottom line. Those are important for healthy businesses. However, you can't have a good, healthy growth, and you can't win against big competitors if you're not being honest with the people you deal with. People will see that. People do buy from people still today. I hope the internet does not kill that off, but they still do. And we play with taxpayers' money, so we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing for them, because it's the people's money.
That's right. Okay, let's see. A lot of this you've covered as we were speaking. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the overall agency or organization that regulates the communications company. You talked a little bit about the FCC, but now in this current structure of our world, what about Homeland Security and anything like that?
Well, when it comes to wireless communications, the FCC is they are the regulating body. There are a lot of other associations that are that, for instance, Homeland Security, that have put certain demands on what communication systems do, what they have to deliver. One of them is an organization called APCO, and they are responsible for the standards that public safety communications must meet. So does it do this or does it do that? You know, when somebody's in trouble over the radio, how does it announce it? What do you see? So that when when Homeland Security or any other federal agency puts a requirement out, they may add more standards to that. So there's a lot of moving parts within both state, local, and federal government that have demands on wireless communications, because they all have to meet FCC regulations. You can't do anything without them. But also, FCC just, frequencies in the world are never owned by people. They are owned by the government. They're like money. And you have the right to use them, and that's it. So when we go and we ask for something, we have to get approvals by the FCC, approvals by the FAA, because you're putting things on towers that are high up in the air, make sure planes don't run into them. And then where's it going to cover? How often can I use this? Where can I use it at? So there's a bunch of different, there's probably 4 or 5 different agencies that you have to go through, regional planning bodies, where you have to go through, you have to get permission, you have to say this is how this is going to work, in order to actually even get to the point where you can start deploying something. So it can take a year before you get all those regulations out of the way, before you can actually do the first thing you wanted to do. And then you have, of course, if you're building something, you have your local government building codes and fire safety codes. And we've had, that's probably one of the biggest differences 30 years ago to today. It was much simpler then. People are much more aware of what technology can do, and it's much more pervasive now. So when you drove down the street back in the 70s or 80s, you noticed a radio tower. They were usually very, very large and very tall. Now, they're everywhere. And matter of fact, there are a lot of places people don't want them. So that, overcoming that and having to be, and becoming more savvy in how that works, getting the right people that you need to on board, the professionals. Before, engineers did this. Now you have architects involved, and you have land use people involved, and all sorts of people that 40 years ago I had never thought about, but now you do. And if a tower's too tall, you have to get a study of how birds migrate. And because they're all considered environmentally sensitive, vertical real estate. And so we got a lot of people that we have to hire that they're a lot smarter than I am. But we've had to grow in that regard and get those professional services. That's part of it. If you want to be in this business, it's the ticket, the entry ticket to do it. So.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going on to my second page. You're doing a great job,
Well,
Henry.
you never have to worry about me talking.
No, certainly not. How is Communications International viewed in the communications industry? Like your not your competition, but your
Our peer group.
Yeah.
Communications, I believe, over the last, good grief, 40 years almost, or 40 years, has really earned a lot of respect. Primarily in the Southeast United States, we're very well known by our peers, our dealers, and our competition. But I think mostly it is considered, hey, these are good guys. They do a good job. That's part of our philosophy. We also manage a large dealer community, which people buy through us. And we also help them. And we've actually taken upon ourselves as part of our charter as the Regional Center of Excellence for Harris Corporation, which is we were chosen, there's only 4 of them in the country. We were chosen because of our technical ability, our size, our bonding ability, our financial strength, and we had to have engineers and all this. So when Harris said, hey, we need these distributors, these very, very strong distributors, we took another step. We also helped them in business advice, because we had gone from a very small 3-person, how we start up type thing, gone through all the changes and said, hey, this worked with us. How can we help you grow your business? Because our dealer business grows, we grow. And if we can help grow somebody, we actually take that and help and give them advice and say, look, we've made this mistake, or we made this and it was successful. So I think that's been another part. It was different. It started in 2010, being a distributor, and we sat down and said, how do we want to do this? Harris had their own ideas on what we did, and most of the time we did it their way. But we also added another aspect of how do we help you grow your business too, not just by selling stuff, by past practices that we've been successful at, and said, have you thought about this? And kind of helping them plant that seed that they may see, hey, that worked for them. Let's see if we can try it. And we're very proud of some of our dealers that they've done very, very well. And it was through some mentoring, and been part of that. Bob's been part of that. Even some of our board members have been part of that. Our engineers, it's just in our nature to do it. And we've seen people grow, and we like that. We like people to succeed, and it's just part of, I don't know, it's just what we do, and it's been nice.
Sorry, I had to cough.
Oh.
What role do you feel that the employees play in the company's success?
No company has success if you don't have great employees that want to do the job. This is not a fit for every employee we've ever had. The culture here is we are an employee-owned company. Some people are more comfortable in a large corporate environment where they're not necessarily, they're very focused in on what they do and their accomplishment, and that's great. Our employees, and I think when they come in, which is different than, I kind of need to start over. When people come to CI, we want them to come for their life. In today's corporate environment, people come for 3 to 5 years. And that doesn't serve us. You work here, you flourish here, you can grow to whatever level is. The vice president of operations of our company started out as an installer in the Bay, putting radios in. And he's the vice president of operations. He's not an owner. He wasn't. Now he is. But it's anybody can do that here. But if you are just looking to sit there and go, okay, I need to put in my time, I want to be a number within a corporation, and I'm going to leave the second I can get an extra $50 in my paycheck, we're definitely not the company. Because we want people to be here for a lifetime. And that's an unusual thing to do in today's world. But Bob has instilled that on everyone that's been here short time and 35, 40 years. I was talking to one of our coworkers yesterday. She's just been with us, oh my gosh, maybe 8 months. And she's fitting in very well. But I asked her, I said, what do you think? What do where do you see yourself? She says, I want to be here and grow old here. Well, when you're 32 years old, you don't hear that very often. And that's exactly what we want to hear. We want the people to do that. And that's because Bob made that important to us his whole lifetime. And it's very infectious. And if you do the right thing, and you people see it, they want it. And being employee owners, I have a little joke that being an employee-owned company is very democratic. And the problem with employee-owned company, it's very democratic because we don't stifle voice. We don't tell people we're not interested in what you say. Now, we don't. Everybody doesn't. You can't have 130 bosses running around. But we certainly encourage people to speak out. When they see something that they think, hey, this might be a good idea, or if they see something that we may need to correct, we pay attention. And that's right up to the CEO, Bob. He pays attention. And so we just do it by nature. So that's what it's like being an employee-owned company. It's a great feeling. I'm not too many more years before I'm going to enjoy the fruits of that. And but it's really a great feeling, and you see it in the people. We've got guys in the project team, and these are hard-working guys. I mean, they're as close to kind of construction worker. I mean, they're not highly paid people. They work long hours. They're away from their families, and it's you can see it on their faces that they're working for something, and they can be afforded an opportunity that they can grow. Maybe they didn't get their college degree. Maybe they weren't at the right place at the right time, which unfortunately big companies tend to put a lot of emphasis on that. Now, some of our most successful people we've had didn't get the chance to go to school. Some people just had GEDs, and yet they've risen in the company because we look at the person. And I think that's what fosters that love of that employee ownership. And now they are working for themselves, and they're making themselves better.
What do you think were some of the factors that Bob took into consideration when he was toying with the idea of doing an employee? He didn't have to do that.
No. So employee-owned companies are a bit novel. They're becoming a little more popular. In the mid 2000s, as we really had grown, we were very, very established and doing lots of multi-million-dollar jobs. One of the things that as Bob got older, not much younger than he is, but as he got older, is what do I do with the company? That is a problem for single owner businesses that are very successful. And he was not very interested in having a big major corporation come in and gobble somebody up. Those usually don't turn out extremely well for the smaller side of that. So we, at that time, myself and somebody else, we had talked about, I'd actually met somebody that was an employee-owned company, and we came back, we talked about it. I said, have you ever thought of this? And, and he started to do research, and he has a good friend that was one of our board members today. And they started socializing it. And what drove him to do this was, how can I give to the people that made me successful? It wasn't just Bob. It was all of us. What's the best way to give back? And I personally believe, and I know this, is that this was Bob's way of giving back to the people that made him successful and grew the company. It was the best way, because other than that, he would have just floated off into the sunset, and who knows what had happened, and he just couldn't do that. He just couldn't do it. So I 100% believe that that's why he did it, why he wanted to give back. It was part of his nature.
Okay. Let's see. When a city or public entity chooses to partner with CI for its communication system, it demonstrates its faith in CI's ability to design and maintain a system that will work in all conditions, including emergencies. What factors do you think contribute to CI's success in receiving contracts in so many locations? Now here, everybody knows you guys, but when you go to some of your other locations, that may or may not be the case. What are some of the factors that...
So as we spread out and we bid on jobs in Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina, one of the things that we have great customers. We have great references. So, and I'll use an example. We bid on a job in Boston, Massachusetts. Now here we are, a bunch of Southern guys, have no business being in Boston, but we had seen this opportunity. It was a bit unique for the MBTA, for the Transit Authority. So we decided we were going to go after this, and so we went up. And it was a big deal. It was a 5-year project. We had offices up there and apartments and everything else. So when we bid on this job, again, we're in Boston. We've only visited, as tourists. So we went through the procurement, we went through, what we did, oral presentations, everything you could think of that you would do in a public procurement. And we were chosen. Got the contract. So I always was like, wow, this is like a King Arthur's court type thing. We were really out of place. But I was talking to the purchasing director. He was retiring, and I was invited to his retirement party. We're sitting at the table, and I said, Peter, you gotta answer this. I said, here we are. We're a bunch of yokel Southern guys, never been north of the Mason-Dixon line. Why in the hell did you choose us? And he laughed. He thought it was funny. And I said, no, really, tell me. He said, so Northeast is hard. The people are hard, business is hard. Because we're always thinking that people are trying to take advantage. He says, you and Bob came up here, you presented yourself, you said, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what it's going to cost. And you did it. So there was no fuss over you. You did what you were going to do, and you did it. Says that's very unusual in our world. So we've just taken that philosophy. If we tell you we're going to do something and we say we're going to do it, check our references, and we put it all on the line. We sit there and say, look, this is what we're going to do, and we've been successful at it. Not every time, but we do well against, again, a lot of competitors out there that they look at the contract as the guiding light. We look at us. If you have to go to the contract, then you've done something wrong. And because customers should, and this is, again, we take public money when we do these contracts. We know that the people, the elected officials, It's part of the public trust that they watch their money. I want them to certainly watch my money. So it's important that we do what we say and do what we do. I mean, that's it. And if they can't see that, and our customers rave about us, and we say, please just call. Call the sheriff of Hillsborough County. Call the county commission in Indian River, Brevard, Volusia, you name it, please. And at that time, well, we know at least that's going to be a good reference. Again, all the time it doesn't work, but it does more than you think. And we're all in. Once we do it, we're all in. That's how we treat it.
Great. Now I want to talk to you about two different ends of the communication spectrum. I want to talk to you first of all about a first
all right if I-
responder.
Okay.
A first responder out in the field,
Mhm.
whether it's a police officer, a fire, whatever. When they go for their radio, what is it like? What is important? What is it? You guys, they've trusted you to make sure their radio is going to work. What does that feel like for you guys?
What we do is we believe at CI that we do something very noble, and I don't want to paint a picture that we're more than you are, but these are the people that rely on their radio, which are going to come if my grandchildren need help, or God forbid one of us is in an accident. So this is the communications thing that potentially will save my life, your life, and it's one of their tools. I don't want to have them to think about, is it going to work or not going to work? I need it to work. I need it to personally work because we have people relying on us. So we're part of this community of first responders. It may be, we're maybe not running into the fire, but we're making sure that when that firefighter gets in there and he or she is saving somebody or needs help or needs assistance, we put that tool in their hands in order to make sure they are safe or they get the help they need. The feeling how important that is one of the driving forces of what we do. When a dispatcher is talking to somebody and they're going into harm's way, and that first responder needs to communicate that, and it doesn't take much to look at the news today and see people in terrible situations. And it's the old adage, when you press the button on the radio, you want it to be heard. We're the ones that make that happen. We're the ones that are responsible to make sure it happens. And we take that. That is our charter. That is how important it is. And we take that very, very seriously. And we're a fun-loving organization, but it has to work. And that part is it's just we take it. It has to work. And what do we want to make sure that it does? We design things very heavily. Bob is integral to the design of these things to this day. He's sitting in his office right now working on a design of something. And when he looks at it, part of that is it going to work where we say it will work? And when that person, whoever that is, and whatever the reason they're talking on the radio, one, it could be their life, it could be mine. Will it do what it's supposed to do? And that it has to. So we take that pretty serious.
Yeah, I would say so. That was excellent, Henry. Now, the other end of the spectrum is when an emergency is impending. I mean, it's coming. There's a disaster. We know a hurricane is going to hit Louisiana or wherever. You guys might be in charge of the communication. What happens here? Do you guys go to DEFCON level? Or what what provisions are put in place?
when we start getting into where we know we've got an impending a hurricane, or when we had the fires back in the late 90s, or even somewhere else in the country, in the Gulf Coast and whatnot, we're responsible for thousands and thousands of communications devices spread all throughout the Southeast. So we go into that kind of a mode. We are part of the like state of Florida, the what they call FS5 planning, which is part of their emergency operations. We're a part of the emergency operations in every county or city that we work in. And the first thing we do is, where are the people? Want to make sure our employees are out of harm's way and their families are safe. So if you're a technician and you're in Indian River County, just as we were under a very serious threat earlier this year, where do the employees need to be? Are their families safe? Then the next thing, we go to those customers. What do you need? We look at our own inventories. Do we have extras of this, extras of that, batteries, antennas in case high winds? And we do resource management. Where are we going to pull people? How are we going to take equipment? We move equipment out of the area, out of harm's way, so we can bring it back. So we go through a pretty exhaustive planning. We're part of a lot of different networks that when we're under like a hurricane watch, we're on conference calls with many of our peers in the industry. What are we doing? How are we preparing? So we're hearing as the state is hearing it, or as the National Weather Service is hearing it. We're part of those, and so we take all the management people and we all kind of come into those roles. What are we doing? I'm older. I don't get out in the field very often and do anything, but we all take a different persona. If I need to go and deliver 100 batteries to the sheriff's department in Lee County, well, I'm getting in the car and I'm going to drive up there or drive down there and give it to them. So we all kind of take on, what does it take to make sure that we're supporting everybody we possibly can. When Katrina came through, we don't necessarily maintain Gulfport, Mississippi, and Pascagoula and all that, but there are customers. We've done work out there. Well, as devastating as Katrina was, we put together a team of people and we went out to Gulfport, Mississippi to help restore that radio system. And we were there as long as it takes. So when the floods happened after Matthew went through in Johnston County, for instance, up in North Carolina, devastated the county. That was our customer. We took people out of harm's way, and then we sent restoration people up from here, living in campers or living wherever they possibly live, to help put that. The system never went down. We were very, very lucky. We had just put a brand new system in, and it never missed a beat. But the people are so affected, you know. So we put the people in place to make sure, what kind of extra things can we do? Do you need more radios? Do you need whatever you need, generators? When Puerto Rico was devastated year before last, we, along with a partner company, they had a plane. We filled it up with radios and generators and water, and we sent a team of people down there to get communications up. It's what we do. So it's the mode we go into anytime we feel that there's a significant something that's going to put a lot of people in harm's way. Of course, the Bahamas were the tragedy in the Bahamas has been, and Bob was personally very affected by that. And so we've done, communications doesn't really matter because they don't even have any power towers, but we've had several food drives, water drives. This room was filled with, we did pallets to send over to Marsh Harbor and Green Turtle, because it's what we do. Yeah.
That's great. Let's see. You've really, really covered a lot of the things that we were gonna talk about, doing a great job.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're gonna have a tough time cutting. There's a lot of good
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. I just wanna go real quick back to what I said when I sat down. I wanna touch briefly on giving back to the community. Is Communications International do any philanthropic support of any nonprofits in the area? I know Bob and Carmen, and you can certainly speak to that, Bob and Carmen, and how they give back to the community, and why do you think they're like that? Why do you think Bob and Carmen are so generous?
Oh, I don't have to think, I know, because they care. At any given time, much to Bob's chagrin, there's people living in Bob and Carmen's house that they have taken in from someplace as a favor or whatever. And we joke about that. You go, well, how many people are living at your house right now, Bob? Oh, but we do. We take a similar thing. For instance, this past weekend there was I think it was a 10K, some kind of thing for Vero Police Department or something. Well, the company organized and brought people in to put money in and actually participated in it. And we do that often. We support the Florida Sheriff's Association. We're very active in that. We over in our Hillsborough office, we're very supportive of the city of Tampa. Has a big some kind of run that we had. Oh my gosh, 25 employees that participated. Had a table and we gave away stuff. We do it up in Brevard and Volusia County. We support. And this is the company, Telecommunicators Week, and that comes up in the springtime. So we usually sponsor a lunch within the 911 centers and bring in food and barbecue and pizzas or cookies or whatever it takes to do those things and to support the people that are that need to be supported. So it's just instilled in us, and we've had a great example with Bob and Carmen because they lead with their hearts and they lead with their they give back, and so we do within the means that the company can do. We give back, and we budget for it, we plan on it, we expect people to participate in it, and they do willingly, and so that's the things we do, and. It's, oh gosh, I can't think of any place that we are at that we don't. Each office has their thing of what we should do, and we give them the freedom to do that. It keeps our marketing people a little busy sending stuff out, and but yeah, it's whatever we can do to support. Whatever we can do to support. We like doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Very good. Bob's work requires many hours of time spent away from his family. How has he handled that through the years?
Not well. No, no. All of us, Bob especially, growing up and literally, I've watched we're almost the same age, so our children are of similar ages. And watching his children be born and him the same with mine, we've been away from our families for quite extended periods of time, and it is hard. As we've gotten older, we don't do it quite as much, but you've adjusted because I do. Again, there's the component of it that what we do is very important. It's been important as a company, important to keep people fed, an occupation. But what we do to the people, for the people we do it, is also very important. So I hope our spouses and our families understand. I know his do, because I don't know all of his grandchildren because he's got so many, but I know Robin and Ryan, watched them grow up. And they know how important it is. And I'm sure it's been, my wife the same with my children. I'm sure it's been frustrating from time to time. But it's what you do, what you got to do. I mean, you look at the people from FPL; they're away from their families for long periods of time. You come to work here. You kind of explain to your families, this is what we do, and I can be gone. And again, maybe we're not the right fit for people, but we also look at our leader and said, look, these are the sacrifices he and Carmen have made over the years, and we accept it, and we say this is the right thing to do. So, yeah, it's taken its toll, but you make your choices on what you want to do.
Right. Way back at the beginning, I just thought of this while you were talking, that Bob shared with us that for the first 5 years of the company, he didn't take a salary.
He did not. Bob worked here, never took a paycheck, never took a penny home. When, because I was involved very heavily at that time, I was doing a lot of administrative work for the company. When we had the bank collapses back in the 90s, the bank we did business with was taken over by the federal government and froze everything. So it was devastating to companies. And we weren't that big. We were doing well. But we had to make some very, very hard choices. And always Bob sacrificed him personally before he'd ever not pay an employee or make sure somebody didn't get a paycheck. That never even was him taking his pay, was never even a consideration. And I have personally sat with him, and he goes, no, make sure, yourself, myself included. I mean, I was benefit of that. And they, both Bob and Carmen, whatever it took, they sacrificed, no matter what. And how do you not look at that and go, you hope that we all can lead that example? And again, that's all been part of the culture, is he's ingrained it in us. And we're just, sometimes I think some people look at us, we might be cult-like, but it truly is. He has a huge heart, both of them, and we just hope that we all can live up to that. He's been a great inspiration and a great mentor,
Well,
and
you know what?
frustrating as hell.
Well, you know what I'm going to bring up next? I'm going to bring up the R word, the retirement word. Do you think Bob will ever really retire?
If you talk to Carmen, he better, or they'll be planting him. I hope so. He, at this stage in time, he comes in every day. We don't pay him. He's back to where he was in the first 5 years. But I think probably not. Will obviously he be less and less? I certainly hope so. For him and Carmen. No matter what, we all work for something that is our next stage, and maybe we don't know what that is. I look at Bob and I truly, truly hope that he doesn't come in because he worries, or he thinks because he always contributes. We abuse him because he doesn't come in on time, and he goes, "You're not paying me," and then he goes, "That's no excuse," because it's his words back to him, and he doesn't want to hear that. But oh gosh, will he? More than he is, yes. Completely, probably not. But I really want him to, because he's certainly earned it.
He has earned it, that's for sure.
Before we move on, can we just get in a statement, I don't think Bob will retire, something to lead into everything that you've been saying. You danced around it, but
Oh,
you
okay.
haven't quite hit that.
Okay.
So ask him if he thinks Bob will
Yep.
ever retire.
Thank you, Jimmy.
You're welcome.
Do you think Bob will ever retire?
Bob will probably never completely retire. And I certainly hope he does but I don't think we'll ever get rid of him.
Okay. Anything else? The criteria for the Entrepreneur of the Year award: business founder or leader who gives back to the community. Why do you think that Bob deserves the Entrepreneur of the Year award?
To be the Entrepreneur of the Year, I believe absolutely Bob deserves it. My father was an independent businessman, and I grew up in that. However, I've been affiliated with Bob now for over 40 years. I've seen what he's done for us as employees, as employee owners now, and I've seen what he's done for the community. I've seen him give back and never question what he's doing. I can't think of a better example that people who are wanting to start businesses, who are wanting to go out there and be entrepreneurs, and I want people to do that. I can't think of a better example of what you have to do, the whole makeup of what it takes. It's not just I have a chance to make a lot of money or I have a chance to do this. It's the whole thing, putting it all together to make a truly successful, truly great business from start to wherever it goes. Because Communications International will be here long after Bob and myself and Carmen and all of us are gone. If you truly want to, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's wanting to start out, know that that's where they want to be. That's what they want. Then Bob couldn't be better as the example of what you should do. So yes, I do believe it, strongly believe it, because everybody should look at it as that's how I should start my business. And you hope that my business way outlives me, because what better legacy do you ever have in life? How great is that? So yes, I completely agree, believe that he is deserving.
Very good, Henry. Does anybody have anything that they feel we missed, we need to go over again? Monique, did you circle anything, or?
No, I really thought that we were gonna have so much good information.
Oh, I know,
I'm
Monique.
not kidding, don't tell Bob, but when you explained the towers,
Yeah.
that's the first time that I really got
Got
it.
it.
Oh,
You
really?
explained it, but you explained it, I mean.
Yeah.
Remember, I had to learn it
Yeah.
that way.
See, for him,
Yeah.
it's second nature,
Right.
so it's hard to,
Yeah,
you know.
when he explains it, he's still explaining it in that technical.
Right, because he thinks engineer.
Yeah.
And remember, I love technicians and engineers. Guys, don't worry about this. But it's never good enough.
Right.
You're never done tinkering with it. And unfortunately, we don't have enough money to let you tinker and do. So, you know, so.
We've heard some funny stories from his family talking about how he used to tinker with go-karts and things back at home.
You have no
And I
idea.
said, well, I'm sure glad that he's mastered his skill here, because if he did things like he did.
I was talking to Mike Stork, which is his nephew, and I guess you're going to have Tim Dooley do a
He's gonna
speech.
speak at the event.
You know the trouble, and well, we were talking about this just last week. So Mike goes, "Oh yeah, I was talking to Tim, and he says everything we bring up, you cannot discuss at an open meeting." There are lots. So it's going to be a challenge because we let's put it this way: we work very hard, we play very hard, and those who are getting a little older don't play quite as hard, but I think somebody who is in their 40s looking back and have been raised in this environment, yes, they have more stories than we could put in volumes, and not one of them is appropriate that you can really put into a situation that you're going to be doing. But Bob's done so many great things. You know, being politically involved. I've been able to be part of that. I've learned some of the things I do in the company are very politically oriented, not party oriented, politically oriented. And Bob has he's done a great job at being very involved in that. Sometimes I wish he wasn't. I go, what are you thinking? And but when Bob makes up his mind, he's pretty much running that way. And you go, okay. But I think the challenge is going to be what they can talk about, what they can't. And that's not because it wouldn't be great. It just, not everybody may appreciate it. But I tell you, I cannot think, I have been afforded such a great opportunity to be here and to be part of this organization and to be part of Bob's life. And I relish it. It's hard. He truly is a friend.
That's a good thing when you work for your friend or with your friend, and now you guys are all the owners. That's an amazing story. We are going to talk to Steve Perrone. He's going to talk to us about how they.
Steve's a great guy.
Employee-owned companies. So we're going to go into.
Yeah,
that a little
he
bit
was
more.
he was really
Yeah.
he was one of the when he heard about it, he did a bunch of because he's a lawyer. Don't ever tell him that he hates it, but he was really part of getting it going and showing Bob that this was a good way to give back, and
It's a very cool thing.
it is. Well, Publix is an employee-owned company, and you look at employee-owned companies, and you look at people that work for employee-owned companies, and they think differently. They know what they're working for. Now you got to work your career. There's no doubt about it. But one of the other than give back. So a new person coming in, for instance, I'm part of the old guard type stuff. But a young person that's starting out, why would you come here? You're probably not going to get the highest pay scale in the world. But you could have somebody a laboring guy who makes, I don't know, $15 an hour or something like that. And potentially when they retire, they're retiring with a nest egg that would compare to somebody who had been an engineer or a vice president. Where can you go do that in this world today? So yeah, this employee ownership is a big deal, and for Bob to have that, and any of the companies that have become employee owned. My nephew works for Publix. He started bagging groceries in high school. He's the assistant store manager of a large Publix. I mean, that feeling it's incredible.
Because you're working for yourself.
You're working for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't have to take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
Bob took the risk. I worked for Harris for about 2.5 years, and back a few years ago, and I was up in Chelmsford at their headquarters up in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, and they were all sitting around. They were talking about all the dealers and the RCEs, which were they're all very similar. And they were going, oh, they're just they're just taking our money and getting rich, and they got boats and planes and all that. And I said, you need to stop. And they're like, because these are the president of the company and VPs and all that, and they had hired me at a pretty high level. But I will say what's on my mind. And I said, who in this room put everything they had on the line? Their house, their children's future, their educations, everything. Mortgage it to the hilt. Never worried about taking a paycheck because they had to put it in there. Who in this room did that? Nobody. I said, you got no room to speak. Until you go out there and you do that, until you figure out, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to make it, and you have done that to your children and your family and your wife and everything you had, don't talk. You went to a big corporation. You're safe. You didn't put it all on the line. You didn't think about the next day, I had nothing. That's what it's like to do what Bob did. And he did it. And he did it every day.
Yes, he did. That was really good.
Characteristics of